Saint Therese of Lisieux was declared a Doctor of the Church in 1997 by Pope St. John Paul II. At that time, she was the 33rd so declared Doctor of the Church, of which only 3 were women. 2 of those women were Carmelite nuns, both of them named Teresa, Therese of Avila and Therese of Lisieux. Saint Therese is also known as Therese of the Child Jesus and the Little Flower of Jesus. She is one of the most popular saints of the modern church. She was raised in a very Catholic family, and her parents had 9 children, 3 of which died at infancy, 1 at the age of 5. And all 5 of the surviving daughters would become religious sisters, including Therese, who entered the Carmelite convent, also known as a Carmel, at the age of 15, following 2 of her older sisters who had also entered the same convent. At the time, Therese was considered too young to enter the convent. And the story is told that on one occasion when her family traveled to Rome and attended an audience with Pope Leo XIII, Therese encountered him and asked him to allow her to enter into the convent, whereupon he responded, "Do what the superiors decide. You will enter if it is God's will." Known for her piety and simplicity, St. Therese, in her autobiography, The Story of a Soul, shares that she struggled to find a purpose in her role as a nun. She for herself declared that she wanted to live a life that was hidden and that she wanted to be unknown. She would eventually find that purpose in reading the well-known passage from St. Paul that if one had the faith to move mountains but did not have love, it would be worthless. She declares in her autobiography, "Nearly ecstatic with the supreme joy in my soul, I proclaimed, 'At last I have found my calling. My call is love. Certainly I have found my proper place in the church.'" And Therese resolved that in everything she does, she would do it with the basic disposition of love to which Jesus calls all of his disciples. On the one hand, that would seem almost ridiculously simple. But the thing to remember about Therese is, while it was simple, it was not simplistic. Therese came to know the complexities of what Jesus calls his disciples to. And even in small things, she would do with love, and even minor inconveniences would be endured out of love for Christ. One story tells of Teresa performing a simple duty of washing dishes. If some water splashed upon her face, she would not impulsively wipe it away, as many of us would, but would endure even small inconveniences and little discomforts out of love for Christ. In that she grew in holiness, discipline, a connection with Jesus, whom she loved, and a simple but living example among her community of sisters. Despite the simplicity of her spirituality and her approach to religious life, Saint Therese was nonetheless grounded in reality. She is said to have commented on her deathbed, "I only love simplicity. I have a horror of pretense." We should not say improbable things or things we do not know. We must see their real and not their imagined lives. And at the depths of her spirituality, she simply said, "My way is all confidence and love." Dying at only the age of 24, St. Therese, in the last 18 months of her life, suffered the anguish of tuberculosis. It is said that she suffered a night of the soul, a strong doubt of faith in the existence of God. But even in the midst of that, it is said that Therese declared, since she could not bring herself to make a profession of faith, she would turn to her fellow sisters to make that profession for her. Even to the end, she recognized in the love that she had for her fellow nuns in the Carmel of Lisieux, that love of her fellow sisters would lift her up, even in the midst of her suffering and doubt. And it is said that upon her death, one of the older sisters of her convent, ironically, commented, "I feel sorry for the priest who has to give the homily at her funeral. because I can't think of anything exceptional in life that she did. Despite her desire to live a life of simplicity and anonymity, she became popular after her death through her autobiography entitled Story of a Soul, and she also left letters, poems, and religious plays and prayers. Her fame subsequently grew, and eventually, Barbara Stewart, writing for the New York Times, would refer to St. Therese as the Emily Dickinson of Roman Catholic sainthood. Her simple way that was, at the same time, not simplistic, has touched the lives of millions, have been studied by theologians, and eventually led for her to be declared a doctor of the Church. One of the greatest models of sanctity for Catholics of the modern era.